People always ask me why I changed, why I think the way I do, what initiated the whole change, where did it start? And usually I just tell them I went through some bad experiences that changed me. Now, I also tell them that there's obviously more to that story than just that sentence. There's a larger story. Now, there are millions of people in this world, and everyone has a story. Most of our stories is based on some past experience or event that at some moment defined us, who we are today, how we turned out the way we did. Now, in this defining moment, we can either change for better or worse. I have a story, and the reason I share it with people is to get a message across that using something you already have, a powerful gift called the mind, you can change your life and the lives of others. My mother was a working girl. She had sex for money, and I'm probably the result of a job well done. I didn't know my father, neither did my brother, but at a certain point my mother met a man who she later on married. He became the father figure in our life. He was a policeman, and things were good for a while. But after some time, we started noticing the changes in their behavior due to lack of communication and obviously alcohol addictions that they had before they even met us. They would often tell us they're going somewhere, then they'd return back late at night drunk, and we'd obviously experience the side effects of the addictions, abuse, and my mother would often hit us for reasons, sometimes for none. But most of the time, it would seem that she was just expressing the anger she had towards our stepfather. And we didn't really have that role model that we needed while growing up that would develop us into decent young men. So anyway, at the end of primary school, I actually found something that I loved that gave my life more meaning, which was surfing. I fell in love with surfing, and all I thought about was surfing, surfing, surfing. School was quite a bore. I just thought about surfing from morning till night. And obviously what you think about all day is what you want to do, and if it doesn't correspond with what you're thinking about, then life becomes a bit more boring. So I just wanted to surf, and this led me to doing exactly that. I used to surf regardless of the conditions. Blue bottles, howling on shores, it didn't matter. I used to surf whether it was big or small. It seemed to have paid off, because after some time I started entering competitions, I started doing better, I started doing well. I was sponsored, I came fourth in South Africa, got my provincial colours a few times in a row, year after year. But at the age of 15 I experienced my first club, and then towards the end of that year I had my first ecstasy tablet. And that's when my life obviously changed for the worse. Another defining moment, we can say. I lost my passion for surfing. Now I found something else that I enjoyed that made me feel even better than surfing: drugs. It was a feeling that I never experienced before that hooked my attention. One soon led to two to three. Soon I couldn't afford the drugs anymore, and I had to support my addiction. I started selling drugs. My life completely changed. Things went downward. I completely disregarded surfing. I stopped surfing altogether. At that point, I suppose I lost my sponsors as well, and I just went deeper and deeper. I got involved with the wrong people to get the right protection, and it worked. I started partying more often. I spent money lavishly, but I spent more than I could save, because all I wanted was pleasure, and drugs gave me that pleasure. Often my life would be really, really reckless and unbalanced, because there was no balance in my life to start with since I was a very young child. By the age of 16 I was already selling drugs and taking cocaine, and by the age of 17 I was doing crack cocaine, as other people would call it. Sniffing coke, ecstasy, weed was also one of the options, and a lot of alcohol consumption. And by the age of 20 I experienced my first near-death experience, which was from an overdose. I guess a recklessly unhealthy lifestyle caught up, and lack of rest took its toll. By then my mother had already divorced my stepfather. After some time she found out what I was doing, because all along she didn't know, because she had her own issues to deal with. So she found out I was selling drugs. She kicked me out. What could she do? She had no money to help me. She didn't know what to do. She didn't have the knowledge, the wisdom. She couldn't change me. I went out by myself, got a place to stay, carried on selling drugs. And of course you would think that after the first near-death experience I would change. I said I would. I said I was going to stop doing drugs, stop drinking, but obviously we know if words could change us, then this world would be a different place. I carried on taking drugs, carried on selling drugs. Soon after that, I started being noticed by police. They wanted a piece of my action, they didn't want to arrest me, so they started robbing me. I was robbed twice by police, set up through some of the customers I had, and after a while I was investigated by organized crime, who eventually then arrested me in a club. But luckily I had a good lawyer that actually got me out of the situation. But because they didn't have enough evidence, I suppose they got a bit upset and they were watching me even more closely. By that time I got a bit more nervous, paranoid. I took more drugs than I ever did, and then it happened again at the age of 21. I overdosed, and this time it was worse than before. This time it felt I was being crucified. I remember lying in the ward bed. My heart was palpitating through my chest. I could see it when I looked down, and I remember being connected to a heart monitor. That made things worse because I could hear the accelerated beat of my heart. In that same situation, my body was contorting, my heart was frantically beating, trying to keep me alive. It was probably the closest I've ever felt to death in my life. In that situation, the doctor came to me. He still wanted me to sign an indemnity form stating that they did everything they could if something went wrong to save me. Only later on I found out that they were trying to cover their ass by making me sign that, which obviously I didn't. I couldn't because I could barely even speak. My body was going numb, my limbs were twitching, I was contorting as if I was possessed by some demon or something, and all the blood were just trying to keep my heart alive, and my lungs felt like they had collapsed because I tried keeping myself alive by breathing. It got to the point where I was feeling so much pain that I wanted to die. I prayed for God to basically just take my life because I couldn't stand the pain. More than that, I couldn't stand the fact that if I survived, there was a possibility that I was going to carry on doing what I was doing. So I thought, no, death would be the easier option. So I prayed asking to die. Anyway, while all this was going on, in that time they had phoned for an ambulance to transfer me to another hospital. They came, they picked me up, my breathing, my contorting continued. There was a part where I don't really remember much, which was in the ambulance, because all I remember is waking up, not waking up, but opening my eyes at the other hospital, and the contorting, the heart palpitations, everything just disappeared. I opened my eyes and I felt really strange. It was as though something that was sleeping inside of me all my life had woken up, and for the first time in my life, from that moment, I actually thought, how did this happen? What led me to this point? I remember telling my girlfriend, who was also at the hospital, she came along, my mother was also there, she somehow found out what had happened to me. She was obviously in tears, crying all the time. I told my girlfriend to tell her I'm going home. I was fine. I went home that same day, whereas the first time it happened to me, I was in hospital for 5 days. Even though the second time was worse, I walked out of there and I just felt different. I remember catching a cab home with my girlfriend, and on the way home I just kept thinking about this question, how did I get to be the way that I am? How did I get here? And that was the first time in my life that I actually thought about why I was doing what I was doing and how I got to be the way I was. I never in my life have I thought about that ever before. So that's my first experience, how I actually use my mind instead of it using me all my life, getting to a point where I was controlled by random thoughts and just pleasurable thoughts that led me to the circumstances that I was in. Slowly this question led me to doing research, learning. I read books, I devoured knowledge. I started taking an interest in the human body, the human mind, human behavior. Slowly I started to change my life, and I understood the often misunderstood quote, knowledge is power. It is only the potential power unless you take what you know and put it into action. Slowly I took what I learned and I started putting it into action until I became the person that I am today.
And that is what my message is about, teaching people that by using your mind, by filling it with the right content, you can change your life. The only reason you are where you are, the only reason we end up in circumstances the way we do, is because of the content of our mind, what floods our mind. Our life is just an expression of the content, and if you fill your mind with the right stuff, you'll do the right things. And that is how I changed my life. I scrutinized and questioned the person I was, the person who almost killed me, and slowly he started to fade away. We don't learn these things while growing up. No one teaches it to us. And if school doesn't teach it to us, or our parents, where do we learn that from? By devouring knowledge and putting into action everything I learned, I changed my life and became who I wanted to be. And anyone can do this. If I can do it, so can any person. It doesn't cost anything to use your mind, which is what so few people do. The only difference is, when I walked out of that hospital the second time it happened, I became more conscious. Only later on did I find out what that actually means, because I started meditating, observing my thoughts. I learned about the human mind, how to control it, or specifically mine, and how I lost control. I became the master of something I was a slave to. And what happened to me? I'd go through it all again to experience this journey called life. As for surfing, we're back together again. Surfing daily, loving it again, found my passion, can't stop thinking about it. But now I have something else that I think about more often than surfing. It's my mission, to help people. I want to give back to life some of the life I had been given. And if I can change one person in any positive way, then it's definitely been a life worth living. Scars I have are from a war called life. I'm not a survivor, I'm a warrior. We are all warriors in our own way, because we've all been through experiences and events that change us for better or worse. My name is Zeek Hattingh. I'm from Durban, South Africa, and I hope my story helps you in any way. If it's a positive way, then that's the best route, I suppose. If you want to know the full story of my life, or more about me, how I changed and how you can change, then check out my website or get a hold of me. I'm always willing to help anyone that needs to be helped.